They didn't scream the first time they cut me out. They didn't have to. They just stopped saying my name. Most people think betrayal is loud, shouting, slammed doors, angry voicemails. But the kind I got? It was quieter. It sounded like silence over the holidays, like being the only one who didn't get the family group photo, like watching your little sister get praised for showing up while you get punished for standing up. My name's Eleanor Hayes, 32, financial consultant. Not the flashy kind you see on TV, just good at what I do. Data, structure, risk mitigation, boring to some, but I love it. I also happen to be the only person in my family who didn't join the Hayes property dynasty, as they love to call it. My grandfather built the Hayes name on rental units and commercial lots, passed it down to my father, who married my mother, who gave birth to 2 daughters. I was the older one, the responsible one. But Savannah, my sister, she was the light in their eyes. She dropped out of school, failed 2 startups, hasn't held a job in 3 years, and somehow still walks into family brunch like she owns the building. She does TikToks all day, talks about manifesting abundance. Meanwhile, I helped buy her first car, covered her credit card debt, paid for the roof repair on Mum and Dad's duplex, and when I got promoted last year, they didn't say congrats. Dad said, "So, still not coming into the family business, huh?" Mum just frowned. Savannah got a new phone that same week, courtesy of them. It's weird. You'd think being useful would make them love you. Turns out being useful just means they expect more. The real shift came subtly. Thanksgiving invites that got lost. Christmas plans where I was told, maybe it's best you spend it with friends this year. But when bills came due, suddenly I was family again. Still, I stayed quiet. Because that's what we're taught, right? Family first, family over everything. Even when that family forgets to include you. If you're the kind of person who watches revenge stories late at night, hoping that one day someone like you finally wins, yeah, you might want to stick around for this one, because I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just started paying attention. And when they finally crossed the line, I didn't burn the bridge. I bought the land underneath it. It happened on a Wednesday, mid-morning. Nothing out of the ordinary, just back-to-back meetings, emails, coffee going cold too fast. I was finishing a budget review when I heard the commotion. At first I thought someone had slipped or had an accident, but then I heard his voice. "Where is she?" "Eleanor Hayes. She works here, right?" I looked up, and there they were. My parents. My father, red-faced and puffing like he ran up 5 flights. My mother, eyes sharp and wild, holding Savannah's phone in her hand like a weapon. My boss stood, confused. My teammates froze. I stayed in my chair. "You disgrace!" Mom spat, her voice echoing off the glass walls. "You refuse to help your own sister? She's about to be evicted." Dad slammed his palm on my desk. "You wouldn't even exist without us. And now you're too good for this family?" They didn't lower their voices, didn't ask to speak privately, didn't even pause to think how humiliating it was, for me, for themselves. "You're going to sit here in your fancy office and let your own sister sleep on the street?" My mother held out her hand. "Hand over your paycheck, now." I didn't say a word. I looked around. My boss, speechless. My co-workers, horrified. And my parents? Not an ounce of shame, only entitlement. I stood up slowly, picked up my jacket, left the report half finished on the table, and walked out. No yelling, no breakdown, just stillness. It was in that silence I realized I wasn't their daughter, I was their account. And when I finally refused to pay the bill, they tried to collect it in front of witnesses. You ever had someone betray you with zero shame, like you were the crazy one for standing your ground? If you've ever been in that spot, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Seriously, what would you have done if your parents stormed your workplace like that? because in that moment I knew something had shifted, not in them, in me. The girl they raised would have begged, apologized, handed over her card, but that girl was gone. And what came next? Well, let's just say I don't raise my voice. I raise the stakes. The thing no one tells you about being the responsible one is that people don't love you for it. They just come to expect it. And the moment you stop, it's like you've committed a crime. After I walked out of that office, I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I went home, poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started reading. I pulled up the family trust documents my grandfather had set up decades ago. I'd seen them before, back when I helped my dad file property taxes during COVID. But this time, I read everything, carefully, every clause, every footnote, and that's when I saw it, buried on page 17, paragraph 4. In cases of proven financial negligence or personal misuse, any party's trust allocation may be frozen and redistributed at the discretion of the legal executor, pending evidence and independent review. My grandfather had built that clause in to protect his legacy, to stop the exact kind of entitlement my family had weaponized against me. It was like a match lit in the dark. I realized I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to fight them on their terms. All I had to do was prove the truth. So I got to work. I started collecting receipts, screenshots of Savannah's public posts, her bragging about $600 sushi dinners, luxury spa days, expensive handbags she claimed were manifested. I dug into her Cash App activity, PayPal logs. Her digital footprint was a financial disaster. Then came my parents. I pulled mortgage records, found out they'd taken out a second mortgage on their third rental home without telling anyone. I found deferred loan notices, missed payments, property tax warnings, even a few flagged gambling site transactions tied to my father's bank card. And with every file, every download, every saved PDF, the guilt got quieter. They always made me feel like I was ungrateful, that I owed them for existing, that love meant giving even when it cost me everything. But looking at those numbers, something inside me shifted. They weren't victims. They weren't helpless. They were reckless, with money, with power, with people. And for the first time, I stopped feeling guilty, not angry, not vengeful, just clear, crystal clear. They trained me to think sacrifice meant loyalty. But now, I saw it for what it was, control. They spent years expecting me to clean up their messes, but this time, I wasn't going to clean, I was going to document. I didn't go back to work the next day, or the next. Instead, I scheduled a quiet meeting at a downtown law firm. Not the one my parents used, mine. A neutral space. No family photos, no plaques honouring 3 generations of Hayes men. Just me, a leather folder, and an attorney named Rachel Donnelly who looked like she'd seen it all and lost patience with 90% of it. She flipped through the trust documents and financial reports I'd compiled without saying much. Just the sound of paper, the click of her pen, and her eyes moving faster than her mouth. 10 minutes in, she looked up. "No one's ever tried to enforce this clause," she said. "I figured," I replied. "But it's there, legally binding, and I have receipts." She nodded slowly. "Savannah's portion is easiest. Public spending, no job history, 0 effort to improve. Your parents will take more work. They'll push back, maybe threaten to sue." I didn't flinch. "They can scream," I said. "They already have. In my office, in front of my boss. They don't scare me anymore." She smiled, just a little, the kind that says, "I like you." So we got to work. Rachel helped me draft the formal request to freeze Savannah's trust portion for 10 years with mandatory financial literacy check-ins, to place my parents' portion under review citing mismanagement and concealed liabilities, and then, my favourite part, to execute my right to purchase controlling interest in Hayes Legacy Group using my portion of the trust. It wasn't just revenge, it was reclamation. They built their identity on this company, used the name like a badge of honour. But the truth is, they'd been bleeding it dry behind the scenes and hiding the mess under smiles and family brunches. Now they'd face the same scrutiny they demanded from me all those years. Before I left the firm, Rachel asked, "Are you sure this is the route you want to take?" I paused. Not because I doubted the answer, but because I wanted to feel it land in my chest. "I'm not doing this to punish them," I said. "I'm doing it to protect what they're not worthy of holding." And that was the truth. I wasn't some bitter daughter with a grudge. I was the only one who still cared enough to keep the legacy from collapsing. They thought silence meant weakness, that my loyalty was blind, but they forgot something important. I watched them my whole life. I know how they play. I just never told them. I learned how to win. 2 weeks later, we scheduled the meeting. A conference room in a downtown office building, glass walls, clean lines, no family photos. Just a long table, a carafe of water, and 4 chairs waiting to end a 3-generation empire. I arrived first with Rachel, my attorney, calm, focused. She laid out the documents, colour-coded tabs, signature flags peeking from legal briefs like little war banners. They came late, of course. My father walked in first, still wearing his leather driving gloves, always performative. My mother followed in heels too high for her age and rage simmering beneath her foundation. And Savannah, late 20s, oversized sunglasses, fake tan, and a Louis Vuitton tote she didn't pay for. "What is this?" my dad barked before even sitting down. "You're calling family meetings now?" "I figured neutral ground was safer," I said evenly. "You've made a scene before," my mother scoffed. "What is this really about, Eleanor? Still mad about the office thing? We were upset. You blindsided us." Rachel didn't wait. She opened the folder, began the formal explanation. Savannah's portion of the trust? Frozen. 10 years. Locked into a conservative investment fund. She'd have access again when she could prove financial stability. Savannah's lips parted. "Wait, what?" Rachel continued. "My parents' portion, under review. Pending results of an independent audit into hidden debt, deferred mortgages, and misuse of trust-backed assets. Possible revocation based on Clause 17B. They laughed at first, then they stopped. My father stood. "You can't be serious." I looked at him, eyes steady. "Oh, I am." "You're destroying your own family." "No, I'm protecting what's left of it." And then came the final blow. Rachel handed them a separate folder, my personal motion to buy controlling interest in Hayes Legacy Group, using my unspent trust portion and independent funds. Effective immediately, I now held 51% of the company. Savannah's chair screeched back. My mother gasped. "You're taking our company?" "No," I said. "I'm taking responsibility, something no one else here has done in years." My father's voice broke. "This is our legacy." I smiled, small, tired. It was. There was a pause so long you could hear the hum of the AC, and then Rachel placed one final sheet on the table. A termination letter, effective immediately. Both my parents were formally relieved of their executive titles. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't ask them to understand. I simply stood, gathered my papers, and walked toward the door. Savannah's voice cracked behind me. "You vindictive freak, you're ruining everything." I didn't turn around. "No," I said, "I'm saving it." I left them there, frozen. My mom staring blankly at the signature line. My dad gripping the arms of his chair like they were the last thing tethering him to relevance. Savannah whispering, "This isn't real," to no one in particular, and as I walked out I felt no guilt, no weight, just peace. They had spent years expecting me to clean their messes, and now they'd sit in them. The funny part? They thought I was the one who walked away from the family legacy. But in truth, I was the only one who ever respected it enough to fight for it. The texts came first. At 2:47 a.m., my mother wrote, "You went too far. This is heartless. You've destroyed your own blood." Then came the voicemails. My father's voice, cracked, but not out of sorrow, out of disbelief. "We gave you everything. You were supposed to carry on what we built. You'll regret this, Eleanor." But the thing is, I didn't. For the first time in years, I felt nothing. Not hate, not guilt, not the ache of waiting to be chosen, seen, loved, just silence. The kind of silence you don't run from, but breathe into. I changed my number, blocked their emails, redirected Savannah's angry messages to an archived folder labelled emotional blackmail, trash. The world didn't explode. The company didn't crumble. In fact, under new management, Hayes Legacy Group, now renamed EH Strategic Group, started showing its first clean quarter in 5 years. Funny, right? They always said I wasn't a real part of the legacy. Turns out I was the only one trying to preserve it. But the most personal twist came a month later when I bought it. The house. The one I grew up in. The one my mother used to decorate obsessively every Christmas. The one she once told me, coldly, after I'd questioned giving Savannah another $2,200. "Maybe this isn't your home anymore." Well, the market had shifted. Their financial reputation had tanked. They had to sell, and I bought it, cash. I didn't throw a party, didn't paint the walls or burn sage or make TikToks walking through the front door like some grand revenge move. Instead, I turned it into something better. A financial counselling centre, specifically for women who've been manipulated or financially controlled by family, women like me. We offer pro bono consulting, resources, and legal education, because the truth is, emotional control often hides in bank statements and silence. Some nights, I sit in what used to be my childhood bedroom, now a private office with warm lamps and free tea, and I watch women walk in for the first time, unsure if they're allowed to say no to the people who raised them. And every time I tell them, "You're not selfish, you're just free now." That's the kind of legacy I want my name on. And my parents? They exist now as whispers in places they used to own. People talk, words spread, even extended relatives who used to look at me sideways started reaching out saying, "I always wondered how you held it together." They saw the documents. I didn't have to justify a thing. The numbers spoke for themselves. As for Savannah, last I heard, she was selling makeup on livestream and blaming the haters. But I don't watch. I don't look back. I wake up early. I run. I eat breakfast alone, with no texts asking for rent, no passive-aggressive guilt about loyalty, just stillness. And the quiet thrill of knowing I didn't just survive my family. I outgrew them. You know, people always say blood is thicker than water. But what they forget is oil is thicker than both. And when something toxic floats to the top, you learn to skim it off, not because you hate it, but because you love yourself more. Have you ever had to cut ties with family, not out of anger, but for your own peace? I'd really love to hear your story in the comments, even just a sentence. Sometimes seeing someone else say "me too" is more healing than any apology you'll never get. And if you're still in that in-between space, wondering if walking away means you're heartless, trust me, you're not. You're just finally choosing yourself. Please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. I'll see you in the next story. You're not alone anymore.